Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Likon Onobanjo. The top stories at this hour. President Tinubu sets up Economic Advisory Committee. Despite pleas, Nigeria Labour Congress says no going back on its two-day nationwide protests as police authorities in Lagos warns it will not tolerate any disruptions in the states. 15 killed in Sunday Mass at a Catholic church in northern Burkina Faso. Details to come your way shortly. We start by telling you that President Bola Tinubu of Nigeria has set up an economic advisory committee comprising the federal government, subnationals, and the private sector. The president announced the setting up of the committee after he held a meeting with some key stakeholders at the State House in Abuja on Sunday evening. Among those who were at the meeting with the president are Aliko Dangote, Rabiu Samad, Wale Tinubu, Tony Elumelu, and other selected leaders of the private sector. President Tinubu said the goal of the advisory committee is to provide additional efforts in stabilizing the economy and ensuring the best economic future for Nigerians. In the meantime, Qatar has announced it will indeed host the Business and Investment Forum proposed by the Nigerian President Bola Tinubu during his upcoming visits to the Arab nation. This surprising turn of events comes after Qatar initially declined to host the forum, citing scheduling conflicts with its Minister of Commerce and Industry, Mohammed bin Hamad Al Thani. However, in a surprising development, the Qatari embassy has officially announced the rescheduling of the Business and Investment Forum to coincide with President Tinubu's visit. Despite earlier reports suggesting a disagreement between Qatar and Nigeria over the forum, a leaked memo reveals that Qatar's Ministry of Commerce and Industry has extended apologies for the rejection and confirmed the event's rescheduling. Joining us on the news is Ambrose Idoke, an international affairs analyst, and he will be discussing this more with us. Thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Thank you. Good evening.
So this meeting with Qatar includes bilateral discussions at the highest level across strategic, diplomatic, and economic issues. What do these two countries stand to benefit from each other?
Well, if not the way we run our country as Nigeria, I don't see any reason why Nigeria will be the one going to Qatar or begging Qatar to have a meeting with our president. It's just where we have placed ourselves as a country, the giant of Africa, going to a country. Qatar is just over 2 million, 2.3 million in population. Nigeria is over 220 million population. So Qatar is like 1% of Nigeria's population. And then when we talk about the GDP of Qatar, it's so far higher than that of Nigeria. GDP per capita in Qatar is $85,300, while that of Nigeria is $4,900. What we use as the statistics of 2020. You can see that the disproportionate GDP, net economic growth in Qatar. Qatar has achieved an urbanization rate of 99%, almost 100%, while Nigeria, we are still at basically 50%. So you can see they're ahead of us in terms of urbanization, in terms of economic metrics and other indices of development. But in science, in natural resources, in whatever we have as a country, we are so far, far bigger than Qatar. Because we have not played our politics well, we can see a small Qatar, having, just issuing a memo that they cannot receive our president in a sideline of the economic summit. Because maybe they have looked at it, there's nothing Nigeria has to offer them in terms of economics investment summit. What does Nigeria have to offer Qatar? And so that is why this And I think in a bid to save face and to do some diplomatic decorum, they had to, just allow that to happen. But I think they have looked at it. There's nothing Nigeria has to offer them in terms of, exchange of economic indicators.
Okay, so you said that Nigeria has nothing to offer rather. So what about the population? What about the size of course, you talked about our economy and the GDP that's not really encouraging. But then when you look at our population, when you look at the quality of the brains that we churn out, don't you think that that might just be exportable, a change or an exchange rather of ideas, knowledge, and human resource? Don't you think that can be something that Nigeria can offer to Qatar, and of course that country can benefit from?
Nigerians leave Nigeria because of hunger. Nigerians leave Nigeria because of poor wages. Professionals leave Nigeria because of poor remuneration, because of poor welfare packages, because of lack of infrastructure, because of poverty. And that is why even communities come together to sponsor an individual. For example, you look around now, most of our children studying nursing, they just want to finish and get registered and get out. So people are even looking at it as get out of this country as a way of economic prosperity. Serious countries don't do that. Serious countries welcome people to their place because people want to come. People only go to where the economy is booming. So for your citizen to leave your country, and it's not because of commerce or because of you are exporting human resources in the name of human resources, just like what India is doing. India is exporting ICT all over the world, and that is what we call exportation of resources. Most Nigerians don't want to go. They love their country. They want to stay behind because we have the capacity. But because we are not taking care of our own people are leaving purely because of hardship. Look at the migration of our doctors. So is that what we call exporting human resources? That is not exporting. People are leaving their own volition. How many of these people who have left are government-sponsored, what I would call economic expedition? None of them. So when you say people like just deliberate attempt by India, I'm giving India as an example because they've been able to export their ICT skills all over the world. They're able to export, when you go to the big giants of tech in the Silicon Valley in the United States, is the Indians running them. So that is what we call exporting. This is where countries deliberately groom their people to export resources. But now when people are living out of hunger and poverty, you don't call that exportation. It's migration.
Well, Ambrose, we know that Qatar is a country in the Middle East, and the challenges you have raised about Nigeria are not peculiar rather to only Nigeria. It's like a challenge in Africa, and not only in Africa, other continents also. But then let's quickly scale it down and look at some areas of security, counterterrorism. As we've heard, we hear that Nigeria is trying to strengthen ties with Qatar in these lines or in these areas. So beyond our failings and our shortcomings, don't you think that these particular visits or talk between the Nigerian government and Qatar could yield something positive when it comes to increasing economic capacity, dealing with the issue of terrorism, and looking at the issue of security, because that seems to be another strength of Qatar that Nigeria can benefit from?
Well, when we talk about security, the only thing Nigeria can benefit from a Qatar-Nigeria relationship security is, for example, where terrorists wire money en route Qatar to Nigeria or vice versa, which we saw even in the United Arab Emirates. So they are using the United Arab Emirates, including Qatar, to be able to route money for terrorism financing. Apart from that, there's nothing else. In tourism, we have nothing to offer. We have abandoned our tourism sector. So it's only the Qatar, those islands that have been able, in the Emirates, that have been able to do something with their own tourism. Turns their world in a space of 15 years, 20 years, that turns their desert into, a hub of tourism all over. We have not been able to do that despite our own expanse of land. So is it Qatar that will come teach us how to do? So we are not just ready. Nigeria's president should not be junketing to other countries, like small countries like Doha, for its economic summit. We should invite, if you are serious people, we should tell Doha, look, you have done so well with your tourism. Come to Nigeria, see what we have here. Come and let's make it work. Not that our president is going there And then we want to do, then the trade minister is telling us, oh, our schedule is full. We can't have an investment summit by the sideline. I mean, for me, that is insulting. And I think Nigeria should, let's have some respect for ourselves and let's not just go anywhere for the sake of it. We, despite what we are doing to ourselves, I think a lot of countries still respect us for what we have, for the human resources we have, for the natural resources we have. It's just the acts to get them together. And we should not diminish ourselves further by just go to anywhere where we are in the name of traveling and by bilateral talks. What are we bilaterally with? What bilateral talks are we having with Qatar? Please,
Well,
Nigerians should wake up and play our role.
Ambrose, basically these travels and engagements with other countries are aimed at attracting investments to Nigeria. So now
My
that
brother,
we
I
know...
understand you. When we want to travel to make investments, you'll be serious. We should go to Germany.
But the president has traveled to some of these countries where we have investors, and they have not in any way shown any commitment to want to work with Nigeria in terms of investment. So if you go to the big powers and they are not willing to commit their funds into the economy, don't you think it is needful then to look at other countries that might just be willing to partner with Nigeria to build the baby steps until we get to that pedestal where we say the economy is buoyant and can now...
We are not babies. It's only babies that do baby steps, my brother. We are not babies. We are adults with all giving God talent of adulthood. We should just get our acts together. Qatar will not help us get our acts together. Qatar is not the person responsible for not producing. We're a consuming country. What does Qatar produce that we want to? Is it not the same oil we have? So if they want to go and learn something from Qatar, they should go and learn how to refine oil products at home. Let's get serious. Our steel plants are there. Was it Qatar that built the steel plants in Ajokuta and Warri and Alaja? Where is our auto assembly plants? Where is our textile industry? What does Qatar have to offer us? So we should call all the people that built, the Russians built the Alaja steel plants and the Ajokuta, call them back and go and have bilateral talk. Let us revive them.
Okay.
Who built our refineries? That's what we are talking about here. How does this Photoshop and all these things, or what photo ops we do up and down in the name of bilateral relations? Let's get serious.
All right, let's get serious. Ambrose Idoke, thank you so much for talking to us on the news. We appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Let's move on now. Authority heads of state and government has lifted, that is ECOWAS anyway, has lifted sanctions on the 3 member states of Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso, following appeals by former presidents of the Commission, including key stakeholders, which have urged the Commission to resort to dialogue. This followed a meeting by the ECOWAS authority heads of state and government, which met in Abuja to review ongoing situation affecting the sub-region. News Central's Amadine Uyi reports.
The meeting was called at the instance of the authority of heads of state and government of the ECOWAS regional bloc. The meeting had in attendance 8 heads of ECOWAS member states, while 3 others sent high-level representatives.
This extraordinary summit was convened at a critical juncture that demands our focused attention on regional issues.
The meeting then went into a closed-door session for several hours. After an extensive deliberation by the ECOWAS authority heads of state and government, the ECOWAS Commission says it is lifting of sanctions which have been meted on Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso. The president of the Commission says that he hopes that these countries will constructively engage with ECOWAS to resolve all issues affecting the bloc.
The authority has resolved to lift with immediate effect the following measures imposed on the Republic of Niger. A, closure of land and air borders between ECOWAS countries and Niger to be lifted. No-fly zone of all commercial flights to and from Niger is to be lifted. Suspension of all commercial and financial transactions between ECOWAS member states and Niger is to be lifted. Freezing of all service transactions, including utility services, is to be lifted. Freezing of assets of the Republic of Niger in ECOWAS central banks is to be lifted. Freezing of assets of Niger state and the state enterprises and parastatals in commercial banks is to be lifted. Suspension of Niger from all financial assistance and transactions with all financial institutions, particularly EBRD and BRID, is to be lifted. Travel ban on the government officials and their family members is also to be lifted.
The ECOWAS Commission, however, urged the government of Niger to ensure the speedy release of its detained President Mohamed Bazoum. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
In the meantime, a former member of the Ghanaian and ECOWAS Parliament, Frederick Opare Ansah, has thrown his weight behind the decision of the ECOWAS authority heads of state and government to suspend sanctions imposed on the three states of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Ansah, while speaking from Accra, Ghana, called for constructive dialogue with the leaders of the states, saying ECOWAS must work towards uniting the region and shun acts aimed at creating divisions. He says member states share the same family, cultural, and historic ties despite borders created by past colonial administrations.
Now we are in the midst of a crisis as a community, and it's important to let cool heads prevail. It's clear from what we are seeing that if the two sides, as ECOWAS on one side and the tripartite group on the other side, decide that they are sticking by their position, then clearly ECOWAS as we know it will have to redraw its map because it will have to exclude these.
You're watching News Central now. We go on a short break. We'll be back in a bit. Do stay with us. Many thanks for being there. We now tell you that the former Vice President of Nigeria, Atiku Abubakar, has asked President Bola Tinubu to take lessons from Argentina's Javier Milei's reforms. Atiku said Argentina and Nigeria closed the last quarter of year 2023 on a similar path of economic downturn, adding that both leaders inherited a disoriented economy, but both applied different measures to recovery. The former vice president said what Milei did to return his country to a place where investors are starting to believe should serve as a lesson to Nigeria's Bola Tinubu. Economic activity in December fell to 3.1% from November, according to government data published on Thursday, a drop not seen since April 2020. At this point, joining us on the news is Dr. Otive Iduzo, who is a policy analyst, and he will be talking to us more on this. Thank you so much, Dr. Iduzo, for joining us on the news.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
So comparing President Javier Milei of Argentina's economic reforms with that of President Bola Tinubu, what were the fundamental differences in the policies that you noticed?
I think that if you look at President Javier Milei and you look at President Tinubu, one of the first things you notice is that they are from different ideological schools. President Javier belongs to the far right, and that is why in his policies, he has privatized nearly 40 state-owned enterprises. And in any case, in Nigeria, there are no state enterprises to privatize, except maybe NNPC, which the presidential candidate of PDP promised to privatize if was elected. Then the second thing, so when you look at Tinubu, the philosophy of the All Progressive Congress is social democracy, which is a little bit to the left. So it's not possible to prescribe the same policies for both President Javier Milei and President Tinubu. And if you look at the substance, that is the challenge of criticism in Nigeria and the danger of single story or the danger of monocausality. In the world today, we are living in a fertile world where there's a lot of volatility, there is uncertainty, there is complexity, there is ambiguity, there is diversity, there is disruption, and there is digitalization. So if you look carefully at Javier's policies in terms of cutting government expenditure, blocking leakage of government funds, attracting foreign direct investments, promoting ease of doing business, all of these are part of Tinubu's economic policies. The only difference will be probably the cabinet size and the privatization of companies. But like I said earlier, there are even no private companies in Nigeria privatized. We are all acknowledged in Nigeria. So far, Tinubu's policies have brought a lot of economic hardship to the citizens, and there is therefore the need to respond immediately to cushion the effect of these policies, which the government has not done well in that respect. And that's why some of us have always argued that we need to go back to the basics. You can't run a modern economy without accurate data, without census data, without solving the problem of identity, without having a credible social register of the poor, so that when there is targeted palliatives, we can go to the poor. So for me, I think that what the Tinubu administration should put a lot of emphasis on is what I call going back to the basics.
Okay, Dr. Egbuzo, talking about going back to the basics, let's quickly look at what the former vice president of the country talked about. Now, he outlined his Recover Nigeria plan, which included improving spending efficiency, blocking leakages, saving money through MDA financial contribution and evaluation. I also talked about moderating recurrent expenditure and also monitoring government procurement processes. So, in the light of all you've said, can all these be achieved within the Nigerian context and culture?
If you look at the first executive council retreat that this administration, Tinubu administration, did, all those things you talked about were outlined in their communique. The challenge we have in Nigeria is not in listing those issues, because those issues are very clear. In fact, it's what we say is visible to the blind and audible to the deaf. The challenge has been the execution capacity, the ability to translate those ideas and policies into action. The challenge is the question of ethical reorientation, that the bureaucracy take these things seriously. The challenge is the one of public sector capacity to deliver on this issue. That's why I said earlier that what we need to do to deal with this recurrent problems in Nigeria is to go back to the basics.
Okay.
We need to be clear. When we go back to the basics, the policies on the face value of the administration can deal with the issues that we are facing. But there is the challenge of implementation.
Okay.
There is the challenge of capacity.
Well,
there is the challenge of even whether those people implementing believe in it and they are doing it, effectively, or whether with any policy, people are looking for ways.
Okay, so Dr. Igbuzo,
personal
basically it's all about
creative
Dr. Igbuzo, basically it's all about having self-conviction and the political will, the sheer will to deliver or to execute these laudable policies that the government has on ground. Thank you so much for your... Yes, we might not be able to accommodate more, but then we have taken note of your points, very vital. Thank you so much for talking to us anyway.
You're welcome.
Let's move on now. The Nigeria Labour Congress says there is no going back on its planned 2 days nationwide protests over the economic hardship in the country. The NLC says this is even as it has uncovered plans by agents of government to cause violence against its members during the protests. In a statement signed by its national president, Joe Ajaero, the Labour Union warned that any attack on its members in the course of their protest will lead to a total withdrawal of workers' services across the country. While insisting on the rights of the citizens to peaceful protests, Ajaero urged the government to come up with ways to address the pains of Nigerians. Now, following the current economic hardship in Nigeria, a coalition of over 80 civil society organizations has called for constructive engagement as the only solution rather than destructive tendencies. The group, under the aegis of Lagos People's Assembly, says while it recognizes the right of the labor unions to embark on protest or strike, the trauma of the 2020 EndSARS protests with its damage to limbs, destruction of lives and public, including private properties, still haunts till today. The coalition says it will help monitor the various social intervention programs recently announced by the Lagos State government to ensure they are judiciously executed for the benefit of the people, and will also provide regular independent reports to the Lagos State government as its own contribution.
That if government is unable to meet with its terms and conditions, as we stated there, we are people who believe that anybody or institution's word should be so abhorrent. So if government has said we are going to do 10 things, and maybe they were able to fulfill, even if it is just one, it behoves on a party to a contract to call for a meeting with the other party to explain why he or she is unable to. Because we don't expect, it's only God that will say A and it will be A. Man can say A and it becomes B. So we will call on government, if they have any outstanding issues with the Labour Congress, to engage them, to make them, the Labour Union is people by, patriotic Nigerians who also want the best for this country. So we don't believe they are enemies of the Nigerian people. And that is why we are calling on them as our brothers and sisters that, look, these times calls for patience and constructive engagement.
If at the end of the day, government fails to implement whatever they agree on, yes, we'll always join. We are products of the streets. All of us that are seen here, we are products of the streets. We are ready to hit the street anybody. We are ready to hit the streets to demand for the rights of anybody whose rights are being infringed upon. But on this note, we must ensure that we exhaust all other options before we go on strike. That's what we're saying. Thank you.
Now we'll tell you that the private residence of the Minister of State in the Federal Capital Territory Administration, Dr. Maria Mahmood, was razed by fire on Sunday afternoon. While the emergency response was slow, it was gathered that nothing could be saved from the property located at number 9 Justice Roslyn Ukeji Close in Hybro, Asokoro. Special advisor on media to the minister, Austin Ilemoe, who confirmed the incident, said the cause of the fire was not immediately known and was consequently being investigated by relevant authorities. In southwest Nigeria, we tell you that the Oyo State Governor, Seyi Makinde, has ordered the immediate closure of a factory suspected of engaging in illegal mining operations along the Idiayunre Road in Oluyole local government area of Ibadan. Accompanied by security officials, the governor personally inspected the factory, reaffirming his commitment to combating unauthorized mining activities in the state. Governor Makinde also pledged ongoing collaboration with the federal government to address the legal complexities surrounding mining operations, prioritizing the public interest. This crackdown comes on the heels of recent arrests by the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, with the state commandant, Augustine Pandono, confirming the apprehension of 10 suspected illegal miners.
Well, you can see what's going on here. Still the same problem, illegal mining activities, and the folks are even getting bolder and bolder. This place, according to records available to us, was meant to be a yard for recycled tires and batteries, but coming in here, you can see that the operation, there's no single battery or a single tire here, so they are mining, they are crushing lithium here, and
the Nigeria Customs Service says that it has intercepted and seized goods worth millions of naira in its efforts to end smuggling in the country. The zonal controller of the Adamawa and Taraba Area Command says that 15 incidents were recorded, including the seizure of petroleum products being smuggled to Cameroon, with a cumulative duty supposed to be over 13 million naira being evaded by the smugglers. He says that the seizures, which occurred at the Nigeria-Cameroon border, were made possible following extensive intelligence information.
The command, in the period under review, had recorded 15 incidents of seizures of assorted items with cumulative duty paid value of 13,352,100 naira and 0 kobo only. In the last week, 2 weeks, we made seizures of 245 jerrycans of 25 liters each of this petrol.
Now, to close up the shortfall in some specific skills, the Abia State government says it has concluded plans to build and establish skill acquisition centers in the 3 senatorial zones of the state. Commissioner for Information and Culture, Prince Okekano, recently informed journalists in Umaya that the schools will be run free of charge. News Central's Chiwelgele tells us more.
Lots of artisans and skilled people abound in Abia State. Yet there is scarcity of personnel in certain areas, such as building. According to the Commissioner for Information and Culture, Prince Okekano, areas of focus and the skills would be various aspects of building, which often requires experts from outside the state.
The government is interested in training people who acquire skills and who will be trained so they can stand on their own. So the schools will be tuition free. And at the end of their training, they will be empowered with funds to go and start their own business.
Most skilled persons in the state are either into cloth making, shoe making, bag making, and fabrication of metals into so many items. When completed, the centers will be made residential for their participants and would be a yearly program for specified number of persons for each session.
Skills like solar power assembly and installation, POP designing and installation, painting, masonry, tiling, and the like.
Some citizens have applauded this initiative, but also expressed concern.
So I think it's a welcome development, and we must give kudos to government. And at the same time, also appeal to revisit that Abia tools. for the better of for the good of Ibians.
The people are hopeful that the skill acquisition centers will surely serve the needs of those who desire such and would equip those who access them financially and otherwise.
And many are unemployed in the streets. That to even start giving them job, I don't think Nigeria can even give all the unemployed youths in the streets now. So we just need to at least have one or two skills which we can use to be helping ourselves till when the country gets better.
Who wants to learn skills, who will like to acquire the skills, but they don't have what it takes. So opening up a free skill acquisition center is very nice. Good. It's a very good thing.
It will attract the interesting youth. Not all youth, those that are interested in that acquiring skills will have the opportunity to meet to get their target in life. I mean the aspiration.
Maybe in the future, Abia State will begin to export such artisans to other states and even outside the country as a way of improving individual finances and growing the state's gross domestic product periodically. In Umuahia for News Central, Chinwe Ugeli.
And away from Nigeria, we tell you that at least 15 civilians were killed and 2 others injured during a terrorist attack on a Catholic church during Sunday Mass in northern Burkina Faso. This is just the latest in a series of atrocities blamed on jihadist groups active in the region, some of which have targeted Christian churches, while others have involved the abduction of clergy. Burkina Faso is part of the vast Sahel region, which has been locked in a battle against rising violent extremism since Libya's civil war in 2011, followed by an Islamist takeover of northern Mali in 2012. The jihadist insurgency spilled over into Burkina Faso and Niger from 2015. We also tell you that 9 people have died in a road crash in South Africa on Sunday after attending an election rally by President Cyril Ramaphosa and his ruling African National Congress Party. The ANC supporters were traveling in a bus at the back of the bus to their home province of Mpumalanga in the morning after Saturday's rally in the eastern city of Durban. The bus is said to have left the road and overturned, the police said. Emergency services said 17 people were hurt in the crash near the small town of Paul Petersburg, around 360 kilometers north of Durban. In East Africa, a United Nations report says the armed conflict in Sudan has resulted in thousands of civilians killed, millions displaced, property looted, and children conscripted as fighting has spread to more regions. The new report, unveiled by the UN Human Rights Office, details multiple indiscriminate attacks by both the Sudanese armed forces and the rapid support forces in densely populated areas, including sites sheltering internally displaced people, particularly in the capital, Khartoum, as well as in Kordofan and Darfur, during fighting between April and December 2023. The report, the UN said, is based on interviews with 303 victims and witnesses, including dozens conducted in Ethiopia and Eastern Chad, as well as analysis of photographs, videos, and satellite imagery and other open source information. We now take you to North Africa, where a Tunisian court has sentenced prominent opposition figure Jawad Ben Mbarek to 6 months in prison after he criticized the 2022 parliamentary election. This was confirmed by his lawyer and sister, Dalila Ben Mbarek. Ben Mbarek, a fierce critic of President Kais Saied and senior member of the Salvation Front opposition coalition, was detained last year on suspicion of conspiracy against the state. Lawyer Dalila Ben Mbarek also said that she would go on a hunger strike to protest against judicial injustices. From other continents, we tell you that Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas met with Jordan's King Abdullah II in the Jordanian capital of Amman earlier today. The duo discussed the latest developments in the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza and the efforts to increase the amount of humanitarian aid entering the Strip, particularly in the north. They also discussed Abbas's opposition to Israel's plans for an operation in Rafah, Gaza's southernmost city, which has become home to hundreds of thousands of refugees since the start of the war. Now, Palestinians taking refuge in a school-turned-shelter in Jabalia are grappling with hunger amid dire food shortages in the war-torn northern Gaza Strip. Hundreds fled northern Gaza on Sunday and headed south whichever way they could, walking down garbage-strewn roads between the blackened shells of bombed-out buildings. Israeli forces, meanwhile, kept striking targets across the Palestinian territory and battling Hamas militants in heavy urban combat centered on the southern city of Khan Yunis.
كل شيء بيتعلق في الاكل فيه نقص، هذا بسبب بيعمل مشاكل كبيره عند الاطفال، منها اللي هو اطفال المجاعات بسموهم فقر الدم عند الحوامل، فقر الدم عند كبار السن. طبعا وفي امراض بتصيب الناس، امراض الكلى، امراض نقص الاملاح في الدم، وهذه امراض خطيره وممكن تؤدي الى امراض الجفاف وامراض اخرى عديده.
شمال غزه لا يصلح للحياه قطعيا، لانه ما في اي نوع من انواع الطعام، لا حتى طعام الدواب انقطع، بقينا ندبر حالنا وناكل، حتى الخبيزه بقينا نلاقي عيش بهان او هان. كل المناطق القريبه الموجوده فيها خلصت، الناس اخذتها. فاحنا الان لحد الان احنا مش عارفين يعني كيف الحياه بدها. الاطفال عندنا بدهم حليب، في اطفال عمره اسبوع، طفل عمره اسبوع، عندنا طفل عمره سنه، عندنا طفل عمره 3 سنين. يعني الطفل ابو الاسبوع مش عارفين ايش نعمل له، ايش نجيب له، ايش البديل للحليب له، فيش امكانيه نعمل بدائل، مش زي الكبير. ابو السنه نفس الشيء. فبنضحك عليهم ضحك على ام 3 سنين الطفله بنعمل لها نشا وميه.
Talking business now, the federal government of Nigeria is expecting 1,268 megawatts of power from the concession and development of 8 brown and green field hydropower projects constructed through public-private partnerships. It was gathered that 3 of the power projects were already given to concessionaires, while the Federal Executive Council had approved the concession of another of the power projects. In a February 2024 document obtained from the Federal Ministry of Water Resources and Sanitation, it was observed that while 3 of the hydropower projects had been completed, the remaining 5 were in various stages of completion. The country has been struggling with poor power generation and supply as electricity firms generate and distribute between 3,000 megawatts and 4,000 megawatts for a population of over 200 million people. Let's now join our sports desk for more sports updates.
In sport, the Confederation of African Football, CAF, has appointed Namibian official in the Mugwanita, Wanyanyuka, as referee, with her compatriots Evelyn Augustinus, Olivia Amuku, and Victoria Shangula in the roles of Assistant Referee 1, Assistant Referee 2, and 4th official respectively. Alice Wangari from Kenya will serve as referee assessor, while Christine Ziga from Ghana will be the match commissioner. The Nigerian-Cameroon clash will kick off at 4 p.m. at the MKO Abiola Stadium, Abuja. I will see both teams fighting for a place in the final round of the qualifier, having settled for a goalless draw in the first leg of their encounter in Douala last Friday. The winner of this tie will face the overall winner between South Africa and Tanzania in the final round of the qualifier for a place in the women's football at the 2024 Paris Olympics. Still talking football, Nigeria's only representative on the continent, Rivers United, have kept their hopes alive after securing a 3-2 away win against Angola club Academical Petroleos Club de Lobito on Sunday evening. Goals from Ikerete Udom, Alex Oyowa and Farouk Mohamed secured maximum points for the Pride of Rivers at the Luanda Estadio 11 de Novembro Stadium. Meanwhile, Dreams FC of Ghana got a vital 1-0 win against Club Africain of Tunisia. Godfred Auhene's second-half strike was all the West African team needed to go top of the table. The Pride of Rivers, currently on 9 points, will have to beat Dreams FC in their last group game to stand a chance of qualifying to the quarterfinal of CAF Confederations Cup. And out to Europe, Francesco Calzona's reign as Napoli manager got off to a drop start in Serie A as a late Zito Luvumbo goal held his side to a 1-1 draw against Claudio Ranieri's relegation-battling Cagliari. The result leaves Napoli in 9th place, 4 points off the nearest European spot. Meanwhile, the point could prove vital for Cagliari as although they remain second bottom, it brings them level with Hellas Verona and Sassuolo above them. Calzona temporarily joined the Serie A champions earlier this week, becoming their coach of the season, but was unable to provide an immediate improvement to their fortunes, with the first half being a timid affair, lacking in chances. Osimhen's goal is Napoli's first away league goal since November 2023. And to wrap up sports update, Virgil van Dijk headed an extra time winner 2 minutes from the end as Jurgen Klopp's kids led Liverpool to a famous 1-0 Carabao Cup final victory over Chelsea. The depleted Merseyside, who were without a host of first-choice stars including Mo Salah, Darwin Núñez, suffered another injury blow when Ryan Gravenberch was stretched off early on. Liverpool threw on a host of youngsters who held their own for the majority of extra time before Van Dijk completed the first leg of a potential farewell quadruple for Klopp with an 118th minute header from a right-wing corner. The two sides will now switch focus to the FA Cup 5th round, with Chelsea hosting Leeds United and Liverpool at home to Southampton on Wednesday night. Congratulations to Liverpool. That wraps it up on Sports Update. I am Favour Itua.
And that's all at this hour. But before we go, we take another look at some of our major stories. We told you that President Tinubu sets up Economic Advisory Committee. And despite pleas, Nigeria Labour Congress says no going back on its 2-day nationwide protests as police authorities in Lagos warn it will not tolerate any disruptions in the state. Finally, we told you that 15 were killed in Sunday Mass at a Catholic church in northern Burkina Faso. You can send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on your screen. And you can also follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV, channel 422, Star Times, channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekon Onobanjo.